The Monday morning sun glinted off the polished glass doors of Maple Trust Bank, nestled in the quiet suburbs of Detroit. Inside, customers moved through their routines with practiced indifference, oblivious to the significance this day held for one man. Frank Red Harris, 71, adjusted his worn Marine Corps cap and straightened his aching back. Though time and pain had thinned his once sturdy frame, he still carried himself with the dignity of a man who had survived war. In his weathered hands, he held a VA disability check, the first to arrive after 8 long, excruciating months of waiting. "Please, God," he whispered, the words catching in his throat. His wife Martha's medication costs had doubled last month, and their landlord wasn't the patient type. Every step toward the teller's window carried the weight of urgency. Frank smiled at Kelly, the young teller he remembered from the neighborhood, though she showed no sign of recognition. "Good morning. I'd like to cash this, please," he said, sliding the check forward. "Just got approved after 8 months." Kelly gave the check a brief glance before pushing it back toward him. "Sorry, sir. Your check can't be cashed here. Take it somewhere else." Frank blinked in confusion. "I've been banking here 25 years. This is my disability check." Kelly's tone sharpened, dismissive. "We have new policies about government checks." She was already turning her attention to the next customer when Mr. Douglas, the branch manager, walked by. Frank tried to catch his eye, a man he'd greeted just yesterday at church. Douglas avoided eye contact. "Is there a problem?" he asked Kelly, not Frank. "He wants to cash a VA check," she said. Douglas sighed, annoyed. "Policy's policy. If he can't follow the rules, he can leave." The lobby quieted. A few customers watched. Most stared into their phones. Frank held up his ID with trembling hands. "My wife needs medicine. Please, sir." Kelly interrupted, her voice rising. "You're holding up the line. There's nothing we can do." Shaking, Frank retrieved his check. 3 combat tours, a Purple Heart, and now this. Denied basic dignity. As he turned to leave, someone muttered, "Guess they don't care about vets anymore." Outside, the old Marine paused on the sidewalk, a single tear sliding down his weathered cheek. 25 years of loyalty, and it meant nothing. He tucked the check away, lowered his head, and walked off, alone. 5 minutes later, everything would change for everyone inside that bank. Frank settled onto a park bench 3 blocks away, his arthritic knee flaring as he lowered himself. He pulled out his flip phone and dialed the number he knew by heart. "It's not working, Martha. They said no again." His voice cracked. On the other end, his wife remained steady. "We'll figure something out. We always do." But the medicine was due today. No refill without payment. Frank stared at the check in his hand. Maple Trust had been his last hope. "Maybe Pastor Jim?" Martha suggested. Frank's jaw tightened. "We're not charity cases." The irony stung. After risking his life in Iraq and Afghanistan, he'd become invisible back home. His mind drifted back to Baghdad, 2004. Pinned down under fire, calling in air support while dragging 2 wounded men to safety. The military had called him a hero then. Now, he couldn't even cash a government check. Back at the bank, Kelly recounted the encounter to coworkers during a lull. "I handled that old vet exactly by procedure," she said proudly. Douglas nodded as he typed an alert into the system. Vet tried to argue policy, possible fraud risk. Neither of them noticed the young woman in the corner who had recorded everything on her phone. By noon, her Facebook post, captioned "This is how we treat veterans," had already gathered hundreds of shares. The comments came fast. "Shame on Maple Trust. Boycott this bank. Disgusting." Meanwhile, Frank returned home to their modest rental. The steps felt steeper than usual. Martha met him at the door, her face pale from missing another dose of her blood pressure meds. "Any luck with the pharmacy?" he asked, though he already knew. She shook her head. "They need payment first, and Mr. Garner called again about the rent." Frank collapsed into his chair, defeated. Combat had never made him feel so powerless. At least there, he had a weapon and training. Here, he had nothing but a piece of paper no one would honor. "What about Tommy at the VFW?" Martha tried again. Frank sighed. "Tried. Their accounts overdrawn from the roof repairs." He closed his eyes. "I'm sorry, Martha." A knock interrupted the stillness. Frank rose slowly and opened the door. A young man in a black suit stood on the stoop. Despite his youth, his eyes held the hard scrutiny Frank recognized from soldiers who'd seen too much. "Are you Mr. Frank Harris?" he asked, voice professional but not unkind. "Yes, who are you?" He held up a badge. "Special Agent Martinez, Office of the Inspector General. We received a tip about an incident at Maple Trust Bank this morning." Frank's heartbeat surged. "I didn't do anything wrong. I just tried to cash my check." Martinez's gaze softened. "You're not in trouble, sir. In fact, I'd like you to come with me. There are some people who want to speak with you." Frank hesitated. Martinez added, "It's about the bank and making things right." Back at Maple Trust, the afternoon lull settled in. Kelly was still telling her story to a new batch of co-workers. "You should have seen how entitled he acted. Like military service means we should break policy." Douglas sat in his office, reviewing quarterly reports, when an email popped up. "Immediate compliance inspection. Inspector General's office." He froze, coffee mug halfway to his lips. Outside, 3 black SUVs and a federal vehicle pulled to the curb. 8 agents in dark suits stepped out, badges flashing. Leading them was a woman with silver-streaked hair. She pushed through the glass doors. "First federal inspection," she announced. "Hands off your stations. This branch is now closed by order of the Inspector General." Customers gasped. Employees froze. Douglas rushed forward. "There's some mistake. He began. "No mistake," the lead agent said, flashing her badge. "Special Agent Diana Watts, Office of the Inspector General for Veterans Affairs." She gestured to a younger agent who hooked up a laptop to the bank's main monitor. The lobby went silent as footage from that morning played. Frank being turned away, Douglas ignoring him, the uncomfortable silence of bystanders. "Man. Section 38 CFR clearly states financial institutions cannot deny access to federal benefits," Watts said. Her team began collecting documents and seizing computers. "Your staff unlawfully denied a disabled veteran his benefits. That's a federal violation." Kelly went pale. An agent approached her window. "You're the teller who handled Mr. Harris?" Outside, news vans arrived. Smartphones captured footage of agents escorting staff away. The hashtag #VetJustice trended by late afternoon. The original video passed 2 million views. In a glass-walled conference room, Douglas sat trembling as agents reviewed his records. "I was just following policy," he protested. "A policy that only seems to apply to decorated Marines?" Agent Watts asked. "You've cashed similar checks for civilians. We have the logs." The doors opened again. This time, Frank Harris walked in, escorted by Agent Martinez. The lobby fell silent. Customers and employees alike turned to look as Frank, standing tall in his faded cap, approached the counter. The bank's regional director stepped forward. "Mr. Harris, on behalf of Maple Trust Bank, we offer our deepest apologies." Cameras flashed as he presented Frank with a cashier's check and a letter from the CEO. "We've also added compensation for your inconvenience." Frank's voice carried the weight of a lifetime. "I didn't want special treatment, just the respect every American deserves." Douglas was led to a federal vehicle for questioning. Kelly wept as she gave her statement. Frank turned to Agent Martinez. "How did you know?" Martinez smiled. "My grandfather was at Quezon. When I saw that video, I called every contact I had." Outside, a crowd had gathered, many in uniform caps. They stood at attention as Frank exited the bank, offering silent salutes to a man nearly forgotten just hours before. In 5 minutes, the forgotten had become unforgettable. That night, Frank Harris became the face of veteran advocacy across America. National news broadcasts led with his story. The hashtag #VetJustice surged. 3 senators issued statements condemning veteran discrimination. By Saturday, hundreds of veterans gathered outside the bank for a Stand Up for Frank rally. From Vietnam to Afghanistan, generations stood shoulder to shoulder in silent solidarity. Maple Trust headquarters announced sweeping policy reforms, a new Veterans First initiative, fee-free accounts, and mandatory veteran awareness training for all employees. At City Hall, the mayor awarded Frank the Pillar of Honor Award. Martha watched from the front row, her medication now fully covered by the bank's Goodwill Fund. "You didn't just stand up for yourself," the mayor said. "You stood up for every veteran who's ever been overlooked." A young customer approached Frank afterward, eyes lowered. "I was there that day," she admitted. "I didn't say anything. I used to think rules were always right, until I saw how wrong they can be." Kelly resigned from banking and began volunteering with a veterans nonprofit. "Mr. Harris changed everything," she said. "I was following policy without seeing the person." Douglas wasn't so lucky. Terminated, investigated, and professionally disgraced, his name became shorthand for bureaucratic failure. With stability finally within reach, Frank and Martha accepted invitations to speak at colleges about courage and moral clarity. Students lined up afterward to shake Frank's hand or share stories of their own military family members. "I never wanted attention," Frank told Martha one night. "Just wanted our check cashed." She squeezed his hand. "Sometimes, what we want isn't what the world needs from us." Community banks across multiple states sent letters thanking Frank for not staying silent and detailing their own reforms. A National Banking Association adopted guidelines addressing veteran service standards. Most importantly, Frank connected with other struggling veterans. Together, they founded Second Chance Veterans, a support network advocating for the rights of those who served. What began with a rejected check became a national movement. As Frank told a room of young Marines, "The battle for respect doesn't end when the uniform comes off. Sometimes, that's when it begins." Standing in his living room, Frank gazed at the framed VA check now mounted beside his Purple Heart, a different kind of battle reminder. "You can close a door on a veteran," he said softly, "but you can't lock out justice or dignity. Not in this country." Martha smiled, taking his hand. "For every silent sacrifice," she said, "there's a moment when honor returns, louder than any policy, brighter than any badge." And that's the story we share here on AZN Stories, where justice finds its way home and dignity is never denied again. Have you ever seen someone stand up for what's right against all odds? Share your story, or type justice if you believe true honor can never be silenced. Subscribe to AZN Stories